All right, welcome back. Today we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series. We're going through the next set of practice questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 practice exams, our task list study guide, and of course, our famous combo pack. We also offer a YouTube membership now. It's a great way to support us and also get access to our Discord. Questions, comments, please let us know. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard, get to our questions. Question 1. Bill has anxiety and will bite his nails. He is attempting to decrease the number of times he puts his fingers near his mouth while in public. What type of measurement should he use to achieve the most accurate results? Measurement question. Measurement questions, for the most part, are very straightforward. As long as you can identify continuous and discontinuous measurements, you should be fine. In this case, we have to consider a couple of things. One is this idea of most accurate. And when we're looking for the most accurate results, and we have a choice between continuous, discontinuous, and permanent product, which type of measurement are we going to choose? We're always going to choose continuous measurement. If the criteria is most accurate, continuous is always going to be more accurate, discontinuous, or permanent product. So we know that. We know we're using a continuous measurement type. Second thing we ask ourselves is, what are we measuring? Well, Bill bites his nails, and he wants to decrease the number of times he puts his fingers near his mouth while in public. So immediately when you read number of times, you can start thinking frequency, a count, or rate, right? Frequency per time. However, if we look at our answer choices, frequency and rate aren't an option. We know we can eliminate D because it's a discontinuous measurement, and we already determined we're using continuous measurement. So we have duration, latency, and interresponse time. Duration is not going to help us here because it's not going to have to do with how many times he puts his fingers near his mouth. So latency or interresponse time. Well, latency is only going to tell us the time in between the SD, whatever gives Bill anxiety, and him putting his fingers to his mouth. Interresponse time, however, is going to tell us what's the length of time he goes between putting his fingers near his mouth. And now, how is that going to help us decrease this number? Well, if he goes every 10 seconds, he puts his fingers near his mouth. If he can decrease that interresponse time, increase the interresponse time, well, he can decrease the number of times he puts his fingers near his mouth. So Bill should use interresponse time and measure how often or what is the length of time in between putting his fingers to his mouth. It's going to be the most accurate, and it's going to help him decrease that number of times he puts his fingers near his mouth. So what type of measurement should he use? He should use C, interresponse time. Kind of a tricky question. Kind of a two-parter, right? Requires a little thought. Make sure you understand how we got to interresponse time, or IRT. You're an RBT who works at home with several clients. Yesterday, a client asked you if you could go with them to the trampoline park tomorrow. You ask your supervisor who gives you approval. You tell the client you will be there. However, you never show up to the trampoline park because you were too tired. Have you done anything wrong? All right. Ethical question, application question. Remember, on our exam, we need to be black and white, meaning you need to know the ethical code. And in this case, you were asked to go to the trampoline park. Your supervisor gives you approval, so that is out the window, right? You are allowed to go do this. You have approval from your supervisor. You tell the client you will be there, so you make a commitment. However, you just never show up because you were too tired. The ethical code says RBTs do their best to follow through on commitments. If you've made this commitment, you have to make every effort to follow through. It's part of our ethical code. If you couldn't have made it, you shouldn't have committed. So have you done anything wrong? A, no, it is unethical to go out in the community with your client. Well, no, it's not. And 2, right, you got approval, so it's totally fine. B, no, you're not obligated to follow through on this commitment. B is the opposite of what the ethical code says. The ethical code clearly states you are obligated to follow through on commitments you make to clients, or at least make your best effort. There's no indication you made your best effort to make it to the trampoline park. You just didn't show up. You violated the ethical code. So if we look at C, yes, you should have made an effort to go to the park. That is what we are looking at. That is just the nature of our ethical code. We want to maintain commitments as best as possible. Now, real life, obviously things change. On the exam, we have to be black and white with our ethical codes, okay, our ethical questions. Whatever the ethical code says goes. D, cannot determine. Well, we can determine because you should have made an effort to go to the park. You make every effort to maintain commitments you make to your clients. A college professor wants to compare how many students show up when attendance is required to how many students show up when attendance is not required. First week, 50% of his students show up. Second week, 60% of students show up. The third week, 55% of students show up. What is the average percentage of students who showed up to class? Percentage question, average question. Okay, we're looking for an average here. Remember, I always like to give you some quote unquote math questions because as an RBT, you need to find totals, you need to find averages, you need to find rates. So what you're finding here is just the average percentage. All this other stuff is distraction, right? What the college professor is trying to accomplish doesn't really matter given what the question is asking. Why it's so important to identify what the question is asking, which is what is the average percentage of students who showed up to class. So if we look at this, how do we find average? Well, we add up all our data points, right? So we add up 50 plus 60 plus 55, and then we divide by the total number of data points, which is 3, and we're going to get 55%. Super easy question. You have to know how to find averages. You have to know how to find totals. If you don't, work on it. It's very simple, right? Add up all your data points and divide it by the total number. Ignore the stuff that doesn't matter. Just answer what the question is asking. They want to know, the question just wants to know the average percentage, right? And we found it. The average percentage of students who show up to class is 55%. Your paycheck after a week of work, mentor telling you good job after a project, and receiving a promotion after you close a deal are all examples of what? Now, if you've been following me and you've been studying, we know that when we identify reinforcers and punishers, what do we look at? We look at future behavior, right? How do these things affect our future behavior? Does the question tell us how the paycheck, how the praise, and the promotion affect us in the future? It does not. So our first instinct is to say, well, we can't determine. However, on the exam, we need best answers, right? And we have to play within what they give us. If we look at our answer choices, there is not a cannot determine option. So we have to pick one of these. So now we go back to, well, you get a paycheck after work, you get praise after project, and you receive a promotion after you close a deal. So they are consequences, so we can eliminate antecedents. Are all these things unconditioned or conditioned? If we look at C, primary reinforcers, well, primary is just the same as unconditioned, right? So we have to now decide, are these things conditioned or are they unconditioned? Paychecks, are they conditioned or unconditioned? Conditioned. Praise, conditioned. Receiving a promotion, conditioned. So, no, we don't know how these affect future behavior, but we have to play within the rules that the test gives us. The test wants us to really identify, are these conditioned or are they not? All three of these are conditioned. They're conditioned reinforcers. Pay and money may be the most common and strongest conditioned reinforcer there is. Praise is conditioned, as is receiving a promotion. All three of these things are examples of conditioned reinforcers. You have to take what the test gives you and answer the question. Nothing more, nothing less. Why it's so important to do all your work up front on the question. Okay, so you really understand what they're asking and you avoid adding stuff to it that's not there. Okay, so what we're looking at here are conditioned reinforcers. Bailey sits with her family to watch a movie on Netflix. While watching the movie, Bailey plays with the rubber band she found on the table. Her mom takes it away and puts it on the counter. Bailey starts to cry. What would you hypothesize is the function of crying? All right, what is function? Function is the reason the behavior occurs. What are our four functions? Escape, tangible, attention, automatic sensory. Remember, automatic and sensory, same thing, right? In this case, what happens? Well, we are looking at Bailey, right? Because we are looking at the function of crying, the behavior of crying. And what happens is Bailey sits with her family. She's playing with this rubber band. Her mom takes it away. She cries. Well, why did Bailey start to cry? Because her mom took the rubber band. What is the crying trying to achieve? Well, ideally, Bailey wants what? She wants her rubber band back, right? The tangible is taken away. She starts to cry. We can hypothesize if the rubber band is given back to Bailey, she'll stop crying. The function of the crying is seeking out the rubber band, gaining it back, therefore gaining back the tangible. What would you hypothesize is the function of crying? Tangible. When identifying functions, okay, think about why did the behavior start? Right? What happened right before the behavior? Okay. And what's maintaining that behavior, right? Right before she took the rubber band away, she was fine. Only when the rubber band was taken away did she start to cry. And we can hypothesize that if the rubber band was given back, she would stop. She's not trying to escape anything because she seemed content. She's not doing it for attention because all her family was around her. And it isn't automatic because she's not alone. It's not happening just by herself. So we can hypothesize the function of crying is to obtain tangible. An RBT is taking a special education class in college. The RBT learns about play-based instruction in her class and decides she is going to implement it at her next session. What is the issue here? So this RBT, being gung-ho, right, trying to be proactive, and we love proactive RBTs. However, what does the ethical code say about interventions? The ethical code says RBTs need to be trained on any intervention they implement. Okay. Additionally, can an RBT take it upon themselves to alter the treatment plan? They cannot. So the RBT, even though she has the best intentions, has violated a couple different things. What is the issue? A, play-based instruction is not evidence-based. Well, it is, but even if you didn't know that, there's nothing that you know or the question says that would draw you to A, right? A should not be an option, okay? You're assuming a lot of things if you're picking A. We shouldn't assume, right? B, the RBT is not trained on play-based instruction. Well, we know that, right? Just because she learned about it in her class doesn't mean she's trained on it, okay? The RBT hasn't received training. She should not be implementing the intervention. Do we pick B and move on? Of course not. We read all of our answer choices. If we read C, the RBT does not have approval of her supervisor, okay? We can also say yes, right? The question does not say she has approval. She just decides she's going to implement it at her next session. Before she can do anything like that, she has to get approval. So nowhere does it say she's trained. That's a problem. Nowhere does it say she has approval. Also a problem. But what is the issue? Well, the RBT is not trained and she doesn't have approval. So the issue is both B and C. Sharon breaks up with her boyfriend after 2 years of dating. Her ex-boyfriend continues to text her, to which Sharon responds with one-word answers. Finally, Sharon's friend tells Sharon she is not allowed to respond anymore. Sharon's friend is recommending what? What is Sharon's friend telling Sharon to do? This is an applied question, so behavior question. What are we looking at? We're looking at Sharon's texting behavior, right? So forever, Sharon continues to respond with one-word answers, which continues to maintain the behavior of texting. Now she's going to do what? She's going to stop. She's going to withhold the reinforcement of texting. And when we withhold reinforcement, what are we doing? A, negative reinforcement. Is Sharon trying to reinforce it? No, she's trying to stop, right? Right now, she's giving it positive reinforcement. No longer. She's withholding that reinforcement. B, positive punishment. Well, yes, she wants to decrease it, but she's not adding anything. Okay. She's not sending back mean text or anything of that sort. She's just withholding. C, negative punishment. Is Sharon taking anything away? She's not. She's simply withholding reinforcement. So D, extinction is the answer. When people get in trouble with negative punishment and extinction, they confuse the two. Negative punishment, we are actually taking something away. Okay, we're removing something from the environment. Extinction, we're just withholding something. Not adding something, we're not taking something away. We're withholding something. It's not like she's taking away text she already sent, right? She's just not sending them. She's just withholding them altogether. So Sharon's friend is recommending extinction. Remind you again and again and again. Punishment and extinction are two different things. You need to learn to identify the difference. Jill was a teacher prior to becoming an RBT. She has now worked as an RBT for 1 year. Jill's PCBA assigns her to a case inside a school classroom. What should Jill do? So if you watched our Monday video, we had a similar competency question. Okay, a lot of competency questions lately. And Jill is asked to go inside a classroom. Well, is Jill trained to do that? course, Jill was a teacher. That's about as much training as you can get. Okay. The competency and the scope requirements are not saying you can't not work with anybody or you can't work with anybody who doesn't have autism, right? It's not the case. They just want to make sure you're well trained. So if you're trained in speech therapy and you got a license, you can do that, right? What you can't do is just go work with people you don't have no experience with. Well, Jill's a teacher. She has plenty of experience inside the classroom. There's nothing wrong with her taking this case. So what should Jill do is A, accept the case, do your best. Why are the wrong answers wrong? Well, B, refuse the case because she's not competent with this population. Jill was a teacher. We can assume she's competent inside the classroom, right? I know we shouldn't assume anything, but we're using the information and only going by the information given. Jill's a teacher. She's got competence in a school classroom. C, inform the supervisor it is out of her scope of practice. Again, it's not. She's a teacher. She can be in a classroom. And then D, conduct a functional behavior assessment and then decide what to do. Should Jill conduct an FBA? No. RBTs don't conduct FBAs. They assist on FBAs, but they don't conduct them. Nothing wrong with this. Jill is competent, within her scope. Jill should accept the case, do her best. Finally, partial interval recording tends to do what? A rote question that we just need to be aware of. Monday, we did momentary time sampling. And here we're talking about overestimating or underestimating. And to figure this out, you just have to analyze it for a second, right? The partial interval, how are we recording? Let's assume we have a 10-second interval. The behavior happens for a split second, it counts as a response, right? So if we have 20 intervals and the behavior happens for 1 second each interval, the behavior is really not happening that much. But on our data sheet, it's going to look like it's happening constantly. So is that underestimating, overestimating? Well, it's overestimating. Partial interval tends to overestimate behavior because the requirement to record a response is very low. Whole interval recording, however, underestimates behavior because the requirement's much higher. Partial interval does not give a complete measurement of behavior because it's discontinuous, not continuous. D, none of the above. No, partial interval recording tends to overestimate behavior. Awesome. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out all of our study materials on rbtexamreview.com. Questions, comments, let us know. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.